I'm going to go ahead and finish roll call. Committee member Rickard. Yes. Vice Chairperson Darris.
Here.
And Chairperson Bourbeau.
Here.
3 present. Thank you.
Okay.
Excellent. Okay. Well, it appears the next thing after roll call is our consent calendar, which we have no items, so we can dispense with that. We do have at least one member of the public here. And Amanda, I don't know if you're able to tell if anybody's calling in, but this is our time for public comment for any items not on this particular agenda. So Gregor, we'll let you go first and see if Amanda can find if there's anybody on the phone.
Well, I have nothing really to address at this point in time. I'm just listening at this point in time, waiting to see where we get to the point where the Oversight Committee is going to review things that have been recommended from the Finance Committee and from the City Council. And so really that's what I'm here for. I said, I've got a meeting I got to run for Nacimiento at 4 o'clock, so I'm going to stay as long as I can. Okay.
Gotcha. Well, thanks for being here. And I don't know, Rochelle, if you or Cindy, if you want to explain, you know, this series of Finance Committee meetings to give Gregor a better idea of when we will, you know, get to those things that sound like are of particular interest to him.
I can just jump in. So typically we start at the back of the budget. So today we're going to be going over the debt service fund. We only have one debt service fund, and it's on automatic pilot. And some of the other funds, those funds that have special purposes, like we talked about the Apple Valley landscape and lighting, all of our landscape and lighting, street and storm drains, some of the funds that just aren't as active. We are going to go through the T-bid and the business improvement and some of those today. And then next one, we're hoping, knock on wood, they're still crunching numbers crazily to go through some of the capital projects. So what I've told Amanda is she's going to send out actual invites to the CSTOC committee for that second meeting in May, and then the 3 after, where we're going to be in the general fund and some of that. You may also be interested in just taking a look at the action plan agenda item on the 27th. It does have a list of budget requests and at least some staff recommendations or starting points for those expenditures too. So if you want to participate in that.
Sure. When in May is your next meeting?
We have one on May.
We have one next Thursday on the 29th.
Yeah, they're going to be each Thursday for the next 5 Thursdays. So May 6th or 13th, we'll get to the general fund, Cindy, which
May 13th will be at the general fund.
Okay.
And Gregor, the 27th is of course our regular council meeting, and so that's an item on our regular council agenda for, because that staff is bringing back, as Rochelle described, a you know, kind of an action plan for some of the things we talked about in strategic planning, and included in that is kind of a list of, I think you call it unfunded requests. What is the technical term you call it?
we call it supplemental.
Supplemental requests. Okay.
Yeah.
Got it. Okay. Let me just check in with Amanda. Anybody on the line? Or I'm guessing not.
You're muted, Amanda.
There we go. I couldn't unmute from the screen that I thought I could. The only person that we have on the line would be Gregor, if Gregor would like to speak.
Okay.
I did
Alrighty.
before you came in. Thank you.
Yeah, he did.
Nice to see you.
Good to see you too.
And okay, with that, that's a great segue to our first item, which, in answer to Gregor's question, I think, Rochelle, you kind of already addressed the budget process. Is there anything else you'd want to say about that before we proceed?
I will defer to Cindy.
Okay.
Well, just very briefly, I know probably Charles, you've already heard this, but just quick on the budget process. So the budget process starts and ends with council. Council holds strategic planning workshops to identify and prioritize goals after listening to the community's wants and needs. Then staff develops an action plan to implement the goals. The departments then prepare their budgets for continuing programs and services to implement those goals. Finance then prepares revenues and pulls together the budget document. The Finance Committee then reviews each of the sections of the budget at the public meetings. And then the budget is presented to council in June at a public meeting as well, which is scheduled for June 8th. Council has the authority to make changes during the budget cycle as well. And really quickly, some resources are restricted and therefore accounted for using funds. The city has about 40 to 45 funds separated into 6 different categories. So we have the debt service funds, the other funds, the capital funds, the general fund, the proprietary fund, and then the internal service funds. So the budget document is divided into 11 sections, and I won't go through all of those because you will see the big book eventually, but today we'll be going over the debt service funds and the other funds. So do you want to jump right into the debt service funds?
All right, thank you, Cindy. Yeah, and essentially, we're going through the budget in pieces. So by the time we get to the end, we will have gone through all 11 parts of that pretty much. And
Pretty much.
so that's important, I think, also for Mark to understand as a new committee member. So, all right, well, Cindy, I take it you're going to be the lead on this. So I think we should go ahead and just move on to our review of the debt service funds.
Okay, thank you. Before we look at the debt service fund, the one that we have in this budget cycle, just want to mention that we're going to be looking at 3 different parts of each fund. So we're going to look at the fund analysis, then we're going to look at the revenues, and then the budget. So the fund analysis provides a reconciliation of revenues and then uses, and then the remaining reserve available for each fund. So this section gives you a look at the bottom line of each fund. Then we'll look at the revenues, and then the expenditures. We'll be providing a little bit more detail on that third part. So let me try and share my screen so we can see, everybody can see the, go. So can everybody see my screen?
Still
Not
loading.
unless your screen
There
screen
it
says
is.
a leader in 2020 Gartner. Oh, there you go. Okay.
There it is.
Although it's kind of small to read, I assume it is the same as the pages in our binder, but I don't know if that does Grigor any good.
Okay, so it is the same thing. It's in your binder and the same thing that's posted on the website. So would you prefer that I take this down then?
Well, I'm just wondering, can you have no ability to make it larger?
Cindy, I think if you just make it bigger on, yeah, there you go.
Is that better?
Zoom in? Yes,
Yes.
that's getting better. Yes. Thank you. Maybe
I
try a
think
little
it's
bit
time for
more.
glasses, Charles.
Like
Well, no,
I
I can read it and I've got the page. I'm just looking at Grigor.
Okay. So
Go
we'll
ahead.
start with the debt service fund. As you can see, we'll look first at the fund analysis. So in September of 2010, the city issued $60 million in bonds on behalf of the now dissolved redevelopment agency for various redevelopment projects, which includes the city, the historic city hall, Centennial Bridge and Plaza project, and then wayfinding signage, just to name a few. So the city entered into an agreement with a successor agency that provides for full reimbursement of debt service payments. The successor agency's obligations are funded through tax increments, and the principal and interest payments are transferred to the city to make the debt service payments. So that's what this fund is about. So if we go down to the next page, D56, which has the revenues, this is the transfer of the principal and interest payments and any expenditures from the successor agency to the city. And then if we look at the next page, which is the expenditures, I'm sorry, I'm trying to look at this page as I'm talking. So we'll see the expenditures for the fund. We have the trustees fees, and then the city bond fees transfer, and then we have the principal and the interest that are paid out to our trustee when the principal and payment are due to be paid out. So do we have any questions on that one?
I do. I just want to clarify a couple of things. When we talk about the principal loan repayment from the successor agency, these are not the loans that are currently disapproved by DOF, that we're working on through legislation. These are ones that are approved and we have the authority and the approval on the ROPS to get reimbursement for.
Correct.
Got it. Okay. And then on D56, when we talk about the revenue from use of money, it says interest income 2010 reimbursement agreement. Interest income sounds a little confusing, in that dollar range. Isn't that actually the interest equivalent to the amount we're paying in interest?
That's the principal and the interest payment.
And as we go through this, because these mature in what, 2040 something, 41, something like that.
Yes.
But they're a laddered series of laddered bonds. Are they starting to get paid off a little bit at a time? All right, and that's the principal payment. Essentially, we're retiring about $250,000 of indebtedness each year.
That is correct.
So just so you can see it, on C43, that principal loan repayment from successor agency, that's the amount of principal that gets retired each year. Basically, that's how much the successor agency pays the city, and then the city pays the bondholders. And then the interest amount on the next page or 2 pages, the next page, is how much the successor agency pays to the city in interest. So yeah, both of those 2 numbers, they come in as revenue and they go out as expenses.
All right, thank you. Does anybody else have any questions regarding this portion?
I just do. The city bond fees transfer is a new line. If you read the lease from the city to the redevelopment agency versus city lease, it says that the redevelopment agency will pay the city the exact amount of the debt service payments plus some rental interruption insurance. But historically, we have just moved over how much the city needs to make those payments, because the city's making earning interest on the fiscal agent reserve. And so the fiscal agent hasn't required us to move over the whole amount of the debt service payment because they have extra funds there. Because of some of the disagreements we've had with the state, and then them holding us to the letter of the law rather than the intent on some things, we are moving towards doing it to the letter of the lease, which means the successor agency is paying the city more than it needs to make those debt service payments. And then this money is transferring that money to the general fund for use. I would like to see, Cindy, if possible, if we could basically zero out the cash, because I think there's some cash that's been accumulated in here to the tune of about 75,000 or more. If we could go ahead and transfer that over in 2021 to the general fund, I think that would be helpful.
Okay.
I mean, if my other finance committee members agree.
Well, is that what's reflected in like your ending fund balance of 77,000?
Yeah, that's what I was
residual?
guessing. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I don't have any issue with that. I was curious about your comment though, that, we're making some interest on the money that's sitting in the reserve fund, which
Right.
essentially is usually one bond payment,
Correct.
1 6-month bond payment worth. But, they're usually, what they call arbitrage limitations on this sort of thing where you can't make money on bond money sitting around supposedly. Isn't that something we have to report periodically to the IRS?
You do have to report if you've issued the bonds for a lower interest rate than you're earning on the income. And there's a whole bunch of other very complicated calculations in there, particularly if you didn't spend the bond proceeds. We've already satisfied all of our arbitrage and got a clean opinion from that. In fact, we used to have to hire somebody every 3 to 5 years until all the bond proceeds were spent. But the reserves don't count for that. They're
Okay.
just required.
As I recall, in San Luis Obispo, it was like every 5 years, and they hadn't done it for like 7 or 8 when I
Yeah.
was there. And there was a potential fine.
Yeah.
You know, we had to write a letter to the IRS saying, oopsie daisy, sorry, didn't mean it, you know. And, you know, got away with no penalty, but still had to pay like $20,000.
Yeah.
So, okay.
Yeah.
Make sure
Our
that's-
last one, they said, this is the last one we have to do. And I'm like, yay.
Okay, excellent. All right, well, no further questions, and we'll move on to the next piece. I did want to comment for Gregor and anybody else out there who's not listening, and that is that, you know, this is very clean. A lot of cities have several different pieces of bonded indebtedness. And the only thing we have is essentially from the redevelopment agency and helping to redo the city hall primarily, but also a few other things. But pretty clean balance sheet in that respect. Okay, Cindy, go ahead to the next issue.
Okay, so we'll move on to Apple Valley Street and Storm Drain Maintenance District #1 fund. So taxes are collected from the residents who live in the district to fund the maintenance of streets and storm drain services in the district. Staff is proposing that there are no levy increases for this budget cycle for this district. If we go to the revenues, you'll see that the revenues will be consistent through the current year and the next 2 years. And if we go to the budget, the only thing that I want to point out here is that Public Works determines some projects that will need to be done here in contract services. So even though actuals have been a little lower in 19 and 20, we request a little bit more money for 22 and 23. Public Works will be doing some street sign repairs and some pavement and sidewalk repairs and some storm drain maintenance that they've identified that will need to be done. So that is just the one thing I wanted to point out on this one.
This has a fairly substantial fund balance in the, you know, $500,000 range. And is that, and this and other districts like it, is that in essence, you know, we need to build up a cushion so that when they do like a major street, you know, repair. So in other words, you might spend $30,000, $40,000 a year, but then all of a sudden you're going to have a year you spend $300,000. Is that the purpose of the large fund balance?
It is, and also in this district, we had planned for us, we did a slurry seal back in fiscal year 19, which came significantly under budget. So we were able to gain some ending balance there as well. But yes, so if you have a storm drain issue or if you have a road issue or street issue, those can cancel out or wipe out that fund balance pretty quickly because some of those might be large projects.
Are the streets the biggest expense, the maintenance expense? Is there a sewer lift station or anything like that that would requires maintenance and repair at times?
Michelle?
I know there is a sewer lift station there, and I thought for some reason it was in the assessment district, but I could not swear to that by any stretch of the imagination. And so something I saw the other day made me think it's not. I need to research that. But there is a sewer lift station right by the park there.
Right, but I would think logically speaking, the sewer lift station is funded through the sewer fund and through the
Right.
sewage, you know, assessments that the property owners pay separately for.
Yeah,
In that, so this is, you know, literally just for streets,
Okay.
storm drain maintenance.
right.
And they separately, as a homeowners association, take care of the landscaping. Is that correct?
They
No,
don't
there's
have
a
hard-
landscape and lighting district that's
Okay,
coming up.
separate district. That's right. Okay.
Yeah, there's no
Gotcha.
homeowners association. I talked to some of the people over there. The reason we're interested is because we have Woods Game Society's got their project there. So we've done a lot of research and confirmed with Nick DeBar about a week ago about the lift station, and they were going to do a little bit more work on that to make sure how much effluent was going through there, what the capacity was. It's near the park. That's the best I know.
It is, yeah. Okay,
Okay. Okay, so now we're moving on to the Apple Valley Landscaping and Lighting District. Staff is proposing no increase this year either for the levy. The $11,000 is at the beginning of the district, the developer contributed some money to the district. And so that to be used for open space maintenance. So that is the transfer in of the money to cover some of those expenditures. And then you have the revenue for the use of money or the interest.
are you referring to the licenses and permits or 11,000?
Yeah, it's, if you look at the next page, under licenses and permits, we have contributions from developers.
Okay,
So that's just a category name, I guess.
yeah.
So they deposited a lot of money up front. That was part of the agreement. And this is the recognition of the deferred revenue that's sitting on hand in the city bank account that, okay, now they've recognized it. We wouldn't owe it back to the developer anymore.
Well, that's interesting because I mean, development's been there for 15 years or so, right? And so does that mean we're just reaching the end of the line with the money they set aside up front?
We didn't start recognizing that until fiscal year 19 was the first year that we started to recognize that.
Okay. Got it. Interesting.
And
Anybody else have any questions?
If we go to the expenditures, I want to point out in contract services again, for all three landscape and lighting districts, the city is going to go out to bid for those contracts in the summer. So staff is anticipating a significant increase in the landscape contract cost due to increased labor costs and increase in materials. And we've also had a contractor, a landscape contractor who we've been lucky enough for them to have a very low contract with us, low cost contract. So we're anticipating that's going to go up, and so we are budgeting for that in the contract services. In tree trimming for next fiscal year, Public Works is going to be doing a tree trimming project out there. They estimate it to be at about $10,000. And then they're also doing some work out in the pedestrian park pathways at the park. There's some water issues there that have been identified. So they're going to be using some decomposed granite to try and fix that problem. And that is anticipated to be about $24,000. And then into the future, we've budgeted for maintaining that, so it doesn't get to be a bigger issue in the future. Any questions?
And do we ever, you go through a bidding process to get to like the landscaping contractor, do we ever get complaints from this neighborhood or other neighborhoods like, hey, you guys picked a dud, or they don't do a good job or what have you, that sort of thing? And I'm curious, we had a real good price. We're anticipating that changing because the contractor is not going to rebid, or what was the basis of that comment?
We anticipate that it's going to go up due to labor costs have increased significantly since the time that contract came on, and then materials too are on the rise. Material costs are on the rise as well. So those are the two concerns.
And I think that contractor has put us on notice that it would increase if he's still the low. I mean, obviously if he's still the low bid. We do get complaints. We get complaints from all of our assessment districts. Everything from it's too expensive to they're not doing enough. All of that. We do have a method. They can call Public Works. We do try and have them call the landscaper directly, and he's supposed to, as part of the contract, deal with neighborhood complaints. But as you can imagine, in any group, you're going to have people that want everything absolutely perfect and people that don't want to pay for anything to be done. And it's a waste of money to do that. So yes, we get lots and lots of complaints.
So I was wondering, who sets the scope of work? I mean, because for example, you could say, we want bare minimum, prune once a year, something or other. And, somebody else might say, oh, no, we want it touched up once a month, blown, brush the streets brushed with toothbrushes and, all the dust vacuum up or something. Who sets the scope? And if the neighborhood agrees that it needs to be increased or something, how do they go about that?
So the city sets the scope, and if the neighborhood, if there feels like there's enough critical mass, they can call the Public Works Department and say, okay, we think we want to hold we held a neighborhood meeting, this many people want to have this, and if we believe that that is accurate, then we can certainly look to change it and need to talk to the neighborhood about, okay, that's how much, this is how much that's going to cost you to do so.
Okay, thank you.
We would love for these to go into HOAs and get out of the middle of them.
Yes, well, yeah, we've talked about that each budget cycle, especially on some of the smaller funds.
Yeah.
At least Apple Valley and Las Lomas have some critical mass to them. But are still, yes, we'd rather not have the city in this business, I think.
Yeah, no.
The Lakes is paying about $100,000 for landscape maintenance on the common areas.
Yeah.
It's pretty
That's
high.
through an HOA though, right, Mark?
That's our HOA, yeah.
Yeah. Which means you're probably, all things considered, able to get that done more cheaply than the city would through city processes.
Absolutely.
Our dues keep going up. But yeah, I was surprised when it was, to see that it was that much. I'm in the wrong business.
All right. Are we ready to move on to Las Lomas, Cindy, if nobody has any further questions?
Yes. So Las Lomas Street and Storm Drain Maintenance District. So staff is proposing a nominal CPI increase for this district, as this was agreed to by the residents who attended previous neighborhood meetings. So the CPI for this year was very low, and then on the second year we are requesting a 2% increase for this district.
And this increase, though, either has been or will be passed separately by the council in separate meetings not related to the budget, right? Because it seems like we address these separately.
Yeah.
That is correct. They will be going to council
Yeah.
in 2 meetings. Yes.
Got it. You just need a number to put in the budget, though.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. Did I go too far here?
Well, no, I think this format is going to be the same as in Apple Colony, right? So if maybe I'd have folks just take a look at these pages and see if we have any questions. I do note on this one, there's a substantial slurry seal project for $394,000. That's very significant.
Yes, so that slurry seal was projected to be done this fiscal year in 21. But after city staff's assessment, they were able to push it out to fiscal year 23. So as you see, there's nothing estimated for this fiscal year, and we're gonna get that done in fiscal year 23. Any questions on that one?
That's a good one, because I know in that neighborhood, there's some folks resistant to worrying about street maintenance. Anybody have any questions regarding the Las Lomas Street and Storm Maintenance District? We can move on to the Landscaping and Lighting District.
Okay, the same thing for this one. We staff is requesting is a nominal increase of CPI for this district. And then to point out, same thing for going out to bid for the landscape contract. So you'll see an increase in contract services for this district.
Right. It looks like, yeah, fairly substantial increase. But what I note here is that the contract services have kind of bounced around 56, 59, then 76, but then down to 65 and now projected up into the 80s, 88 range. Do they bounce around because there's something we're doing one year and not the next?
Yes, I will tell you that's been historically it. I haven't looked for the last few years, but a lot of times, you know, hey, these plants all got frozen. We got to add those this year. Hey, we didn't have that problem in that year. We don't have to do that. There's been small special projects in this district in particular that they want each year. We are definitely expecting an increase in this district. This is, I'll call it a high maintenance district. They do like to talk to the landscaper quite a bit.
Thank you for that explanation. All right. Any other questions? I think we can, are we on to
Deanza?
yeah, Deanza?
Yeah, so Deanza street and storm drain. We're not proposing an increase here as well. And for contract services, there's going to be a few projects done. Again, traffic sign repairs, pavement repairs, some of that stuff that's included there in contract services. There's a slight increase or an increase in there as well.
I recall that on all of these, we used to have an annual meeting with them, and we've stopped doing an automatic annual meeting, right? We only hold an annual meeting on request because we have to charge
Correct.
That is correct.
them admin time for that. So that's not doing it, is saving you both time and them.
Yes, that's exactly.
So,
And-
but a
and none
letter,
of them,
a letter
any
is
of them
sent out.
complained about not having a meeting?
Yes, we've heard a few complaints about it, but a letter is sent out informing all the residents from each of the districts to how the levy will be moving forward. So,
Okay.
okay. And then Deanza landscape and lighting. There's no increase for next fiscal year as far as the levy, but a small increase in the following year in fiscal year 23. Just anticipating the levy seems to be going down. So, I mean the levy, not the ending available balance seems to be decreasing. So we want to just keep it at that, at a comfortable rate, at a comfortable level, so we are able to fund all the necessary projects for this district.
Okay. All right, thank you. If there's no questions on that, we can move on to our first not a neighborhood special fund.
Okay, so this is the Supplemental Law Enforcement Services Fund. We call it SLESF. So SLESF are grant funds awarded by the state of California for frontline police services. These funds are used for police records, staff, K-9 programs, radio communications, any frontline services. As long as you're not supplanting our current budget, you're allowed to use these funds. The annual allocation is $100,000, and we get that allocated to us and given to us throughout the fiscal year, and it goes into a different revenue account, and then we, as we use it, we transfer the money over.
It looks like the, on page C30, that the expenses, though, bounce around quite a bit and are averaging more than 100, if my mental math is correct. What's the cause of it bouncing around so much? And it does seem like it's over 100 on average.
You are correct. It is. So for the past several years, maybe 4 or 5 years, after the end of the fiscal year, the state looks at I guess what they allocated, and for the past 5 years they've had excess funds. So after the fiscal year is over, when they review that, we have been getting additional money for this fund. Last year, just to give you an idea, last year we received an additional $56,000 to use in this fund, which comes in very handy, and we've used it to do some projects for PD services.
Got it. I guess my answer, yeah, is on the next page where the revenues are listed. But so 100,000 is really the base level then, essentially.
That is correct, and that's what we budget for. That third year, we don't budget because we really haven't received anything for that year, even though we will be getting $100,000. We have been getting them, or getting that amount. We still don't budget for that because we don't have the money yet. But we start with the $100,000 base, yes.
I love how government makes it all complicated. Gregor and Mark, aren't you really impressed with how?
Yeah.
It's like, it couldn't be straightforward, you know?
Yeah.
Or maybe it's
Well,
easy.
Great
Explain it.
explanation though. Great explanation though, Cindy.
Well, and the crazy thing is if you budget it, then you can't spend the money on it because then you're supplanting an existing budget. So
Right.
Yes.
I love that.
Yeah. Yep. Well, I think it's good just flipping, you know, you have some pretty good detail on what some of the capital outlay projects as well.
Yes. We do, we're doing a radio repeater project this fiscal year, so.
Anything else we need to know about that, or does anybody else have any questions? Otherwise we can, I think, proceed to the next one, giving everybody a chance to flip through the pages though.
Okay.
I do want to know what crystal filters are though.
What are crystal, where does it say crystal filters? Oh, and miscellaneous.
Communications.
Under
Crystal
communications.
filters. I'm sure there's some radio type equipment.
Let's hope so.
Yeah,
Yes, I think so.
the drug test or something I might know. Okay,
Oh,
Okay.
with glasses, but if you want to go there, I was thinking glasses.
yeah. Okay, so I think we're ready to go to the in lieu and moderate, low and moderate income housing fund.
Okay, so this is the City Council adopted policy of inclusionary affordable housing. So the inclusionary housing consists of district restricted units that may not sell for more than the published limits for a 30-year period. Projects that propose 10 or less residential units may build inclusionary housing on site or pay in lieu fees. So this is where they go if they pay the in lieu fees. So the expenditures are contract services for any legal services that are required. And then the service allocation is the staff time that is spent on managing this program.
And is the $400,000 under special projects, is that the money the council agreed to commit to the, I think, people self-help housing project?
That is correct.
Okay. Got it. And that has not been expended yet, right? Because that project, when would that be expended? Because, you know, those are kind of a long-term thing in terms of the process they go through.
Michelle, I'm not really sure when that will be done.
We do not, they did not receive funding the last time they applied. So apparently it's very competitive right now at the state. So we don't have the loan agreement with them yet. But once they have funding identified, then we would do that. It could be in the next funding cycle, 21, 22. It could be
When, let's say
tomorrow.
everything, okay, so everything, if everything they needed to happen,
Yeah,
we would give them the money prior to construction though, is like,
correct. Yeah.
got it. Okay. Anybody have any questions regarding this fund, or Cindy, have any further comments on the follow-on pages about this fund?
No, unless anybody has any questions.
Cindy, on this one, on available balance, is this cash, actual cash that is actually available, or is this include the loans and stuff?
I'm gonna have to get back to you on that one. I'm not sure.
Okay, no problem, not a problem.
It includes the loans on that.
Okay,
Oh, Linda's on.
there we go.
Ah,
Okay, so not all of that is actually available. Okay,
No, she says no.
it's
So
not all
maybe-
available because, for example, the 400 is committed against that, or what do you mean? It's,
what I meant is some of it may be in the forms of loans to people for affordable housing, in
Okay.
which case we can't spend that because we can't go and say, hey, give us that money back. We have a loan agreement. So we'll get that figured out and may come back to you if that's all right.
I think the one thing I would want to note though for others is on page 8, page 19, the last item, the allocation of services provided by the general fund. Because I think maybe it's Linda who is the one who does this, but there's a lot of administration relative to tracking the deed restricted homes, especially when they sell, et cetera. And that's a pretty significant amount. It's essentially 10% of the, it happens to be about 10% of the fund balance. And so concern would be, of course, if we didn't have a continual progression of payments into the fund, we could literally, run the fund down, have no money to provide for projects, and then still be expending a lot of staff time on it without reimbursement, right?
Correct.
Correct.
Want to make sure that that's something that Mark, you're aware of in particular as a council member, and that the council understand that we need to do that allocation of cost, and yet it has a significant impact on the fund, and the way we do this creates this expenditure of staff time and money with no guarantee that we'll always be able to get reimbursed for it. Okay, if no further questions, I think we're ready to move on to the next fund.
So the next fund is the Business Improvement Association Fund. So this is the downtown parking and business improvement area. The purpose is for the acquisition, construction, or maintenance of parking facilities, decoration of public places, promotion of public events, and general promotion of business activities in the downtown area. So the annual assessment was in 2009 was set at 0, but it has come back in fiscal year 19. Some downtown business owners expressed interest in instituting the levy. So the taxes and assessments come from business license. So when a business pays their business license, they pay 100% into the BIA for the reasons that I stated earlier.
And they seem to be, in my impression, kind of hit and miss in their activity in the sense of the level of involvement, et cetera. Do they, but it does look like they expended $11,181 last fiscal year. Are they still spending money this fiscal year?
Michelle, I'm not really sure what, so we make the payment to the chamber.
Correct.
And I'm not really sure that
Okay.
how we
right.
get information on that.
Gotcha. That's right. We agreed that chamber would be the agent for executing the money. So we essentially, we're writing the check, but we're not sure if the chamber has dispersed it, on behalf of to anybody on
Yeah.
behalf of the BIA.
I don't think they had a ton of expenditures last year, but they did have some. They did do some different projects. Terry's pretty on top of that and works with the chamber and the bid on their balance to make sure that everything's good.
Of course, this year with COVID, they may not have had much opportunity to do some things.
Yeah.
Any
Okay.
questions?
I just have a comment. Can we maybe bump up so that they can expend every last dime that comes in? So in theory, 12,200 is going to be received in 22, 23, and then that should be the ending fund balance because that's how much we'll give them the next year. That way we don't have to come back like you're going to have to do this year where we sent them 11,750, but only 10,800 was budgeted. So we're going to have to go to council to bump that up. But it's still not as much as we received in those those assessments. So if we can just kind of put the expenses a little higher so that we can always send them exactly what we get, then we don't have to worry about that if that works for the rest of the committee.
Well, Rochelle, is that necessary because this being a separate fund, you can't overexpend the fund
Correct.
without council approval?
Correct.
So, I mean, whereas like general fund, yeah, you could,
Yeah, there's enough other
expenditure.
places I'm under,
Yeah.
I can wash it, but when it's one fund like this,
right. So what you're saying is, this has been an unusual case where we need to over budget revenues so that if they do come in higher, we don't have to get approval for
Yeah.
higher expenditures.
and
Okay.
yeah, exactly, and over budget expenses.
Gotcha. So you could even call it like 15,000, even though you really only expect to send them 12,200.
Yeah.
Okay. Does that make sense, Mark?
Yeah, but I guess a concern I have in something like this, again, of course, I'm new to all this, but is that it would become, it might be the thought that there's going to be that kind of money available. I mean, does that become an issue or?
I think definitely you wouldn't go too crazy, but you definitely want it above what you think you're going to get. And then we'll just work with Terry and communications to
You
make
could
sure.
have somebody come in and,
Yeah,
somebody's going to come along and say, hey, you budgeted 15,000. How come we only got 12,200?
that's it. Yeah,
Well, I guess if it's clear that, you get what the revenue is.
that's it.
Okay,
That-
so it's not necessarily what we're going to budget. This is just a way to be able to cover what the revenue actually says.
Exactly.
Yeah,
And
as
that's
long
what
as
our
that's-
contract says.
Yeah, I guess as long as that's clear to the recipient, then I guess, I'm okay with that.
I mean, you could even add a line or a sentence in there to that effect
Yeah.
that you wouldn't normally do for other funds, but you just to make that clear that this is a pass through of,
Okay.
whatever revenues received. So it's budgeted
Right.
a little high to,
Yeah, no, and I think that's a good idea to do that. Yeah, so we don't have to go to council every time because it's a different.
well, these are the kind of things, of course, we're looking for to reduce staff time.
Mhm.
And you got to write a report or whatever, just to add a couple $1,000 to the BIA. So these kind of features are what we're looking for to
Yeah.
improve our budget process.
And then that'll
Okay.
also help with the city's hoarding money and won't let us spend it.
Yeah, there you go.
And you're okay with staff just making these changes? You don't need to see them back, do you?
No, we don't need to revisit this, I don't think.
Okay.
Okay.
The other thing you could have done, I guess, is we could have fronted them $5,000 or something, so you'd always have a little cushion and you could budget the expenditures more
Yeah.
based on a, previous year fund balance. Okay, so are we ready to move to the AT bid?
Yes, so this is the T-bid, the 2% assessment placed on the nightly rent of occupied rooms for all transient occupancies. So this funding is for tourism promotion and increasing stays at the lodging businesses in the city. So the revenue is based on the TOT, what is expected there, and then we take a percentage of that. And as you can see in operations, Terry is a big part of this budget, and along with the T-bid board, and to try and figure out the expenditures here.
Now, has the T-bid board already seen this, or is it coming here and then going to the T-bid board?
I'm sorry, yes, you're right. It's coming here first.
Okay.
You're correct.
Gotcha. And I see that our administration is $2,920, which is about 2% of the revenue. That's based on staff time and finance. That's not based on Terry's staff time and involvement, right?
That's not based on either. It costs a lot more than that. That's based on when we approved the app bid, it was written in the agreement that the city would receive 2% in admin. Fully
Okay.
knowing that
So it's 1% actual.
1% in admin, sorry. Fully knowing that it's going to cost us a lot more.
Okay, Yeah, I was just comparing it to 145. You're right. The total is double that. Okay.
One of the
got it.
things we would like to approach the T-bid board with is, they've been asking us to go from quarterly collection to monthly for a long time. And we've always said, okay, that costs a lot of money. I mean, sending all those out and doing all of that work. There is a request in the budget to go to a program. HDL does a TOT collection program that includes them sending out all the notices, them collecting the money, remitting it to the city, them doing audits every 3 to 5 years, them looking at all sorts of different things. We will probably end up asking for the T-bid to help us with that. And in that case, it doesn't matter if we collect quarterly or monthly, the fee is the same from HDL. So we could move to monthly if they would like.
Are they, as members, asking for that monthly so the T-bid will get money more often, or are they asking essentially as hoteliers who'd rather pay it monthly than quarterly?
I think they're doing both, and I think they're doing it as an at-bid board to have a better understanding of the ups and downs throughout the year of their hotel stays.
Okay, yeah, it's easier to track,
Yeah,
you know,
we don't get
April,
any
May,
monthly
June.
information. Yeah,
yeah, as opposed to, gee, this second quarter was
right.
X. Gotcha, I understand. I can understand that, but I would imagine without HDL's assistance, doing it monthly would be more work for staff, right?
Yes, we estimated about $8,000 worth a year of staff
Got it.
2 years
But if
ago.
you
when
went
we
to
looked at it.
HDL,
They could do everything.
as you explained it, the expectation is the AT bid would need to pick up that cost if that's something
Yeah.
they want.
And we expect that we will probably see a slight increase in revenues, particularly from our Airbnb and our other places. If they believe that they're going to be audited, they may be a little bit more forthcoming about who actually stayed there and what people paid.
Yeah, I think HDL would, just a few letters and phone calls from HDL, even just establishing the process would probably put them more on a path to righteousness
Exactly.
than staff doing it. Okay, got it. So when would that likely come forward? I mean, that's going to go to the AT bid first, right? And then would that come
this
to council or at all, or not?
It is. It's actually in your list of potential supplemental requests, and it's one that staff felt was extremely important. As you know, finance is beyond overtaxed, and having that off their plate, plus the increase in revenue, was going to help with efficiency and potentially revenue increase, and thought it would pay for itself easily. So that's in one of our recommendations.
A little sidebar, last week when I attended the League of Cities Revenue and Taxation Committee meeting, one of the items of discussion, there's a bill, I forget the number, but that would allow the state to directly collect on your behalf from Airbnb, VRBO, those sort of folks.
Oh, very cool.
And it was kind of interesting because several cities that are tourism heavy, it's like they wanted to pass, a resolution for the league to oppose this bill because they were concerned about the state getting their hands into their,
yeah, I can
in any
see
way,
that.
shape, or form into their TOT collections. And I said, well, I mean, I get that you're worried about states screwing it up, but for those cities like us that don't do a lot of this, don't have the staff time to go chasing down every Airbnb, having the state perform it just like they do sales tax collection sounds a little bit attractive. So I understand the reluctance, but I don't think we should kill this idea. And that was the way it went, was the league is opposing it, but open to it with amendments, as opposed to just opposing it outright. But anyway, point being that they could adopt, there could come along a point in time where the state CDFC, whoever the heck they are now, CDFTA, they, that they could be involved in this with some of the larger Airbnb, whatever you call that, industry, I guess.
Yeah.
And And although I'm, you know, they might contract it out to an HDL type entity anyway, but I would think for us in the meantime, HDL would be a good answer.
Right?
Okay. Mark, you have any questions on that?
No.
Grigor has disappeared.
Who's disappeared? Oh,
I think Grigor has disappeared, has he not?
yeah, that was
I know
about.
we had to go
15
by
minutes
4.
ago.
Okay, are we ready to go to CDBG then?
So CDBG, so the revenues are based on what projects and what services we provide. So on this budget cycle, we are looking at a project for Santa Rosa near ECR and 101 sidewalk accessibility. I want to point out youth scholarships. We're estimating 0 in the current fiscal year due to the pandemic. We didn't have the youth sports. That money did get reallocated to ECHO operations, so we could put it to good use.
And
And-
where is ECHO operations?
ECHO is no longer paid out by the city. They are paid out by the county now. As well as we did have one, we do have one project for some construction at their location through CDBG funds a year or 2 ago. That's also paid by the county, so we don't have it on our books.
Okay, so we don't have to report or anything on that, huh?
We do not.
So the money that we allocated to ECHO then is not reflected here either as revenues or expenditures then?
Correct. It is not.
Okay. They just, you know, because there's multi-agencies giving to ECHO, that money just stays with the county and it doesn't go through our book, so to speak.
Correct.
Okay. A question for you. You know, CDBG numbers can, of course, vary every year. But so we show nothing, you know, for 22, 23 requested. Is that because we just don't have any idea, you know, what number to try to put in there? I mean, we know it won't be 0, but we really have no idea what it is. Is that why it's blank?
When we do it goes through council, so we end up doing what we call a budget adjustment and council action item when we actually have those numbers. So we'll go through that process.
Got it. All right, thank you.
I have just one quick question. I'm just looking at these numbers and maybe it's easy to answer, but they changed quite a bit. 18, 19 and 19, 20 were pretty low. Then it jumped extremely high. Now it's down to, and then it went down to 80. I'm just wondering what the discrepancies are, how that, what changed? Were there just big projects that happened in the 419,000 and 414,000?
Yeah, so those are projects. The traffic way at ECR project took a while to actually get going. And it's going to be done for Public Works. They're estimating that's going to be done this fiscal year. But yeah, we didn't have those major projects during those years. And now we're starting to ramp up. We'll have the traffic way, and then we're going to be starting the Santa Rosa project.
And some years, Mark, essentially we're allocating money to a project, but we don't do the project that year. And then we're allocating some more money from the next year,
Okay.
you know, in order to get enough money to do the project. So some years you're going to have no expenditures because essentially you're going to use 2 years of revenue to do the job.
Okay.
Okay, anything else? So we'll go to tree planting.
Yeah, so tree planting is revenues are tree mitigation fees charged to developments for this fund. The funds are used for planting of native trees and ongoing maintenance of those planted trees. So the city works with ALPS to plant and maintain new native trees and shrubs.
Are essentially, I know ALPS as the successor to ANTA, the Atascadero Native Tree Association, has a role to play in advising where to spend tree money. And I know ALPS does a certain amount of maintenance directly because, you know, they have their own work days that I've been part of before. Do we have city maintenance occurring of some of the trees planted with the tree funds?
I don't think we spend a ton of time, but we certainly do spend, parks guys go out there and do some stuff. not regularly. It's kind of overseeing and working with Alps, and trying to figure out what needs to be done. So they don't do the weeding or all of that very often, but they're out there with those guys.
Yeah, it's somewhat, I mean, I've done work days where they're, they got the plantings over in Adobe Springs and then in Stadium Park and then down at near
Yeah.
the sewer treatment plant, and they're, mulching, weeding, putting down chips and
Yeah.
redo cages, that kind of stuff. But what, one of the questions that's been asked of me before, and I thought I know the answer, but I'm wondering if it can change, and that is, what is an allowable expenditure of the tree funds? Because as I mentioned, as far as I know, it's been expended on plantings at some of these, like Alps type properties or open spaces, but not on, trees on El Camino or something,
Right.
either along or, in the middle or on the side, or perhaps not even in a park. And yet, I think a lot of people kind of think that we would use tree money for, planting new oak trees in the park to plan for the replacement of, inevitably dying ones, that sort of thing. Or even some people might think, hey, let's plant some oak trees in the medians,
Yeah.
that sort of thing. How limited is it, and what is, where does it say what that limit is?
So you had asked this a few months ago and sent us all down a long rabbit hole looking. Apparently, apparently we wiped out the part of the ordinance inadvertently that says where you have to spend them. But because it's a mitigation, we're still subject to a bunch of other things. So I would say, okay, eventually we got to readopt that section and make it ours. You can use it on, I think the way we read it, you could use it for native trees. And it's more in the park setting than the street tree. I would also tell you, Public Works would have a heart attack if you wanted to plant oak trees in the medians, just because of the root structure and all of that. But we do have some flexibility to plant native trees in our parks along with that, because you did bring up a good point. People don't really see them down there by the wastewater treatment plant. Maybe Stadium Park a little bit better and some of these other places, but certainly they don't get a lot of views. The one that they have down by the river, Carmelita, near Carmelita, kind of on the way to the Three Bridges Trail down there. Yeah. Certainly that doesn't get a lot of views. So re-looking at that is a good idea, and we should be looking at that.
Yeah, right. I mean, I could see, we shouldn't use this kind of money to plant crepe myrtles and, decorative trees kind of stuff. But if you're planting a native tree, it's a tree wherever you plant it.
Right. Yeah.
Whether you planted it at the lake park, the Sunken Gardens, or, down next to the sewage treatment plant, you're still replenishing, the native trees in the community. All right.
We've done some of the more successful things that we have done in the past. We just haven't done as much, and a lot of it's driven by, it was Anta at the time, now Alps, they did do, native seedling giveaways. They were figuring out that a lot of our blue oaks, which are a lot slower growing and they wanted to give away those. And so I know, I planted a few in my yard and so did others. And anyway, those are things that you could also do with it.
Are they still living? Because I know those are hard to raise, I think.
Yeah, for some reason, my house loves blue oaks. I mean, they're slow growing, but they grow.
Good. All right. Anything else about that fund you want to tell us, Cindy, or Mark, you have any questions?
No, I have nothing.
That's it.
Okay.
So we move on to the general government facilities.
Yes, please do.
Okay, so revenues here come from impact fees. We are looking to do a few projects here. We'll actually purchase 2 vehicles, one for the battalion chief and a new vehicle for Public Works to expand the fleet. And then we are also requesting $600,000 for an asset management software program. So this program would centralize inventory of assets and management of those assets. We're looking for a comprehensive program that's not only going to keep depreciation, keep track of all of our assets, but it's also going to keep depreciation schedules and replacement schedules and even maintenance records for the equipment and the vehicles
And
citywide.
inspection records and what was the other big thing? Oh, condition, similar to our pavement condition critical point management system that has everything there in one spot. This would be it for everything from storm drains to vehicles to computers and everything else. So that's a huge thing for the department head team. Mark, for impact fees, the city adopted impact fees a long time ago, and we're trying to update them, but it's a huge undertaking. And we identified all of the projects that we need to do to serve the growing community and stuff. Hey, when you have not a lot of people, you can do things a certain way. So this one has, if we add a new vehicle to the fleet to go with the new bodies of police and fire and all of that, or new technological increases. What was this project? Do you remember, Cindy? But pretty much the asset management system fit right into that.
Okay.
So it is interesting though that we call it a facilities fee fund, and
Yeah.
our purchases this year are a piece of software and 2 vehicles.
Yeah.
It seems like it should have had the word facilities and equipment, but what you're saying, I think, to Mark there, was that this fund only comes into play when you're increasing fleet,
Correct.
not replacement.
No, not replacement at all.
So
Okay.
20 years from now, this same vehicle would be, or however many years, would be under, general fund or equipment replacement
Correct.
kind of thing.
And it can only be spent on those projects that were specifically identified back in 2006.
Right, because those
Those
were the
things,
basis of
yeah.
charging the fee.
Yeah.
Obviously $600,000 is a lot of money for well, maybe not nowadays for a software program. It's a lot of money for us to spend out of this fund. What are we currently using as asset management software? I mean, are we using an Excel spreadsheet, or what are we, or is that varied by department? Where police might be using one thing and public works a different thing, or?
We don't really have one.
Okay.
We have depreciation schedules in finance that, hey, we bought this and we put those on there. We have various budgeting Excel spreadsheets for technology and stuff like that. We have no inventory system. They have no goods system other than filing cabinets and whatnot out at the courtyard for when was the last time they inspected a sidewalk. They have to pour through tons of paper records. They have no inspection or condition, record really of storm drains. So this would consolidate all that. And then as part of this, when we do our financial strategy and we say, well, how much are we upside down? How much is our backlog on storm drains? We all go, I don't know. Nick throws out a number and I go, Nick, you're way too low. And, trying to figure that out. This would help with all of that.
And so one of the things, I think you might have mentioned this to me though, in a different conversation. It's easy to say, okay, we're buy this software, but somebody's got to input, take the stuff out of the file cabinet, or if we don't have a record of it, somebody's got to go out and go, we have 362 manhole covers.
Right.
And here's where they all are. I know in the city of SLO, where they had a whole separate GIS section, they literally had every manhole cover mapped,
Right.
and every water meter, because they did water. Who's gonna do all this input? I think you mentioned maybe an intern or something.
No, so that's the $600,000 is not just the software, but the much larger cost of it is somebody going through, doing the inventory and having it input into all our systems, our GIS system, and have all of that integrated. That's the real cost of this, not as much necessarily the software itself, which is probably about 150,000 of this, give or take. Could be a little bit higher than that. So
But is that
we're
expense in staff time or in paying somebody outside?
hiring somebody else outside. There's no way we have the time or the
Some of that,
expertise
though-
to do that.
Right, but some of that data in some ways may not exist except that somebody would literally have to pull out a map and go, okay, or drive down the street and go, well, there's a storm,
Yep.
there's a drain cover, there's an inlet,
That's what we're hoping they do.
okay.
So that's what we're saying, is that somebody does that, because otherwise staff would try and do it catch as catch can. But as you know, everything changes constantly. So having somebody that can do it, within a 3-month period or 6-month period all at once, get it in there, get accurate data, get it set up, so that, as Public Works is doing their annual inspection sidewalk, they have software that they can click, hey, there's a crack here, let me do it. It automatically places it on the map in GIS, and it sends a picture so that we can send out the letter to the property owner or something along those lines.
Yeah.
That's what we're looking for, is that fully integrated solution.
Yeah, I do know that, at SLO, they got a lot of work out of GIS interns from Cal Poly, people
Yeah.
who are majoring in GIS, and they could hire them really cheap or even free to some extent and have them do kind of just raw data input of, okay, we want to go map every, I don't know, every telephone pole or something. And they could do that.
Yeah. And we could look at that, but I think, we're hoping for condition assessment, somebody that knows, hey, when I'm looking at this culvert, what condition is it? How many years left? What's the value of it? And can make some of those determinations in addition to just placing it on the map. We actually have good map data for our wastewater system and even some of our storm drains. But the information on the size and the condition and all of that stuff, same thing with sidewalks, is just not there. And so trying to populate all that would be huge.
And given the size of that expenditure, will that be coming back to the council as a separate item? Although the individual, the first contract may only be like 150, you say.
Yeah, usually, and that's what we're still, the amount of research we do prior to the budget requests. In fact, I think this is continuing to go down, so that's good news. Is, hey, are there teams that work together? Do we buy the software separate? Either one, they're going to be over 40,000. So those would definitely come back to council.
Okay, well, we'll stop asking questions then. Move on to the next fund.
Okay. So the next one is the law enforcement.
Wait, one more thing. Can we go back?
Sure.
I just want to make sure that you guys notice we don't have that much. We don't have $700,000 in our general government facilities fees fund. And so what we are planning on doing is borrowing from the general fund to do that. That is extremely common in impact fees because you have these big projects and you don't want to wait till the very end to do them all. But you can do them up front and then pay yourself back over a period of years.
The question though for you on that regard, I'm looking at C36, the revenue line. We budgeted 127,000 for this year. We're only looking at 30 to 40,000. Well, I'm sorry. We budgeted 127,000. Now we're saying an estimated only 30,000, followed by 40,000 in the next couple of years. Was there something about the budget for 127,000, or is 30 to 40 more the relevant average here?
I think that 30 to 40 is more the relevant average, but Jerry drank some of Phil's Kool-Aid last year where he's got his positive, yeah, but we got Emerald Ridge and we got La Plaza and we got this and we got that and they're all coming in and it's all going to happen. So those still are in the pipeline, and so the out years are probably going to be higher than the 40,000. But I think Jerry's done with his Kool-Aid, so.
Well, because the concern would be, of course, that, I mean, if it's $30,000 to $40,000, you're talking about a software program that's 20 years of revenue.
Yeah.
That would be a concern. Although it's interesting, that software is a fee fund eligible expenditure, but essentially it's going to foster good government in this, in the general fund sense of the word, I guess.
Yeah.
But I would be concerned. I'm glad you brought that issue up, because I would be concerned about, anytime, like, as you said, is normal, or it's typical to borrow between funds for one-time expenditures.
Right.
But usually, your payback period isn't 20 years.
Yeah. Well, this one will be
Concern.
more in the, in the 10-ish range, but yeah. So.
Okay. Got it. Okay.
And I do think that's going down. I think at a meeting we had late last week, which Cindy didn't get to, technology is getting some better numbers on that too.
Okay. All right. So now we're good to go to the law enforcement facility fee fund?
Yes.
Yes.
So these funds are used for expansion of existing policies, police station and police vehicles and equipment required for expansion. So we're looking at new vehicles to add to the fleet of $184,000, and then the equipment that goes with new police officers of $36,000. That is what's being requested the next fiscal year.
And so when it comes to this fund or the next fund regarding fire facilities, these, which in the past involved the ladder truck, but we constantly talk about the need to repair or replace the fire station. But I'm assuming that neither the fire station nor the police station, which was built or bought and remodeled prior to this fund being in place, I would guess, that repairing and remodeling, replacing fire station or police station are not part of the list of projects that this fund covers?
No, they're not. They were more for expansion of other funds. That is something that we are changing in the update that we're doing. We have to go through and figure out every project that we might possibly need to serve new development, weeding out those that, hey, no, that really mainly serves old development, and if we didn't have this new development, we'd still need it. And so we are allowed to put an expansion of square feet of a fire station and stuff on the list, but it's not on the list at this time.
Gotcha. Right, but remodeling existing thing is not improving, is not as a result, unless you expanded it, it's not as a result of new residents demanding.
Correct, yeah.
Okay, gotcha. So I just think logically, to the layman, the name of the fund, the first thing that would come to mind is, oh, that's so you can replace your fire station and your police station.
Yeah, I think those are just more of the state names that come through.
Sure.
I will say that these are predicated on the council deciding that adding police officers is important. You haven't seen many expenditures out of here because we haven't expanded the number of police officers. This will do that expansion.
So is there an implied, if you look at new police vehicles, $184,000, these are not replacement vehicles, these for expanded equipment pool, which correlates to an expanded workforce.
Right.
So if one was reading budget tea leaves, they would say, oh my goodness, they want to buy a lot of new police vehicles. That implies, whatever the average cost of the police vehicle is,
Yeah.
divided into 184.
I want to say that's just
Probably 3 vehicles, right?
3 vehicles. Yeah.
Because they usually get a pretty good deal on,
Yeah,
We-
but now by the time you outfit them with MDTs and radios and
Mhm.
all of that stuff, they're running 65 to 70 grand a car.
Well, I noticed the one for fire, the captain's vehicle or wherever it was, a few pages back, was 65 or something. So I'm sure that had to be outfitted with some special equipment as well.
Yeah. They're saying they, again, based on what we kind of put forward, this would be 2 new patrol vehicles and 1 vehicle for a CAT team type of thing. So those would be the three vehicles. And then it runs about $9,000 per officer for the ballistic vest, radio, duty gear, uniform allowance, weapon, and all of those types of things. And so that's what the 36,000 is.
Got it. All right, thank you. Anything else on law enforcement facilities fund, or should we move to fire?
We're ready for fire.
I think we can move on.
So another impact fee fund. The charges for services is the rental of the Ramona
Property.
building. And then for the repaid of a loan. So the aerial truck fund, which is the last one that we'll look at today, purchased an aerial truck, and the fire facilities fund repaid the general fund for the aerial truck. And so now the aerial truck fund is paying back this fund. So in the new impact fee study, we're hoping to combine these 2 funds to make 1 fund.
Originally, the ladder truck, I thought, borrowed from the general fund. And so but that loan had to be paid back after a certain period of time or something. So then we borrowed from the fire facility fee fund. Is that correct?
Yeah, so originally it didn't have to be, but it was. We had reported against the general fund, but then as the Great Recession hit and other things, and there was a lot of cash in the fire facilities fees fund with not a lot of big projects on the horizon, we said, no, let's make that a loan between the 2. This was after we talked to our impact fee consultant. He goes, I don't even understand why you guys have 2 separate funds. They should just be 1. Yeah.
Right. What I'm not seeing here is I see the amount repaid, $8,000. I'm not seeing the balance. How much is still owed by the aerial truck fund to the facility fee fund? I thought it was still several $100,000.
It's about, don't have that number with me,
As of,
700?
yeah, 740.
Okay, so it's not in these pages here. I'm not just missing it somewhere.
No.
No, it's not.
Why is that? I mean, because it seems like there should be a note receivable in the fund analysis or something like that.
We balance to available. How much do you really have to spend? We could put something at the end of the fund analysis that reconciles it to fund balance. We have done that before. I think we've done it for the general fund. So we say ending available balance, which is really, hey, this is how much you have to spend. And then we could put a line, interfund assets and liabilities so that it ties to the actual fund balance on the.
Right, because that's what I'm wondering is when I look at an ending fund balance, like right now saying 648 projected to go to 710, is that actually available?
Yes.
Or is that mostly not available because most of it was loaned to the aerial ladder fund.
No, that is what is available for this one.
Okay, so the total balance is, let's say the ladder truck still owes 700K. The total balance is more like $1.4 million. The available balance is in the 700 range.
Correct.
Yeah, I think for transparency, there should be some note of that because it is relevant, I think.
Okay.
As well as on the ladder fund, it's relevant that it still owes money.
Right. Yeah. What we don't want to do is I think we still leave ending available balance very bold and then just kind of have below it some other information so that people
Sure.
realize, hey, this is what you have to spend. But by the way, there's these other assets out there or liabilities in certain cases.
Yeah. Right. Right. I mean, otherwise somebody say, hey, you're loaning money back and forth and I can't see it anywhere.
Yeah.
You know.
And you can't in the budget, but you certainly can in the audit, the financial statements, but yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. All right. Mark, you have any questions?
No, not on this.
Okay. Let's go ahead and move on to open space.
So open space acquisition fees fund. So these funds are limited to land acquisitions and open space projects. Staff is not requesting any funds to be expended in this fund.
There you go.
The all of these fee funds, as you noted, Rochelle, are predicated on a list of possible projects.
Correct.
So, but of course, open space in most cities is a opportunistic
Yes.
kind of expenditure. In other words, even if you had a plan you wanted a green belt around the entire city or something, you wouldn't know when an opportunity to buy some land is going to fall in your lap. So I'm not sure how projects were originally, quote, listed.
For open space and for parks, the calculation's a little bit different. It is predicated based on equity. So basically they say, okay, right now there's X amount of square feet of open space per person. Future development should keep that standard, and therefore this is what we're going to charge based on that. And then the project is acquisition and improvement of open space. So it's pretty darn broad. There's only one project. That's what it says.
Got it.
This is certainly one in the future that because our transportation one is woefully inadequate. And if you start running the numbers based on the new project costs, it blows impact fees out of the water. This is going to be one in the future that we say, hey, maybe you want to eliminate this kind of the way we're zoned and all of that. Maybe we have enough open space and between Stadium Park and Pine Mountain and Three Bridge Trail and some of those, some of those other things. Maybe this one isn't as important as transportation or others. That'll be a whole different discussion, different day.
Sure. At some point, though, you do have to address of, do we, is there more open space in our future somewhere? Maybe.
Right.
Otherwise, you'd have, when you redo the whole fee structure, you'd kind of ask, why do we still collect this?
Yeah.
So, okay, cool. Ready for public facilities?
Public facilities fees funds. So these funds are limited to expanded or new public use facilities. This fiscal year, we'll finish up the Sue Garten Event Center, and staff's not requesting any additional funds be expended here for the next 2 years.
So based on the description of this, let's say, it talks about expanded use of existing community centers. So if you needed to improve, add parking at the Colony Park Community Center, theoretically based on increased usage by the community, that would be a project that could be funded with this sort of thing?
I would have to go look at the list, but in the future, if we add those parks, yes, that project on there, yes.
Okay. Or in theory, let's say, I mean, because of the Zoo Garden Event Center, all of a sudden we have hundreds of people there every weekend and we need a bigger parking lot. Conceivably, that
We could,
kind of
yeah,
thing.
we could
would-
try and, yeah.
Okay, got it. All right. And do we have a list though of other facilities that are planned as part of that, were used to justify that fee?
I think they were broad. It was additional public event space and was one of them, which was the Zoo Garden Event Center. And I think after the Castle Rock trial, I have all these memorized. I have to pull the book.
So we
Got
have,
it. But okay,
The,
yeah, I got you. But I mean, okay, gotcha. Now, and I guess there's a difference between public facilities fee fund versus park funds. Like if we had pickleball park courts, that's park
Right.
fund.
right.
If now we needed a bigger parking lot because of the pickleball courts, maybe that would be public
Yeah.
facility fee fund.
It would probably be more still the park funds. You're improving that park. Public facilities was more pavilion, any kind of event space is what they were really
Mhm.
looking at.
Okay, thank you.
I think part of the youth center was paid for out of this fund too.
Okay, well, that might be a good segue to library expansion facility fees fund, considering the library has been expanded.
Yes.
so yeah, so the county owns and operates the library, but the city and the residents and businesses have an interest in maintaining the service levels. So these funds are limited to the expansion of the library facility space and then expansion of the library collection. And staff's not
And
requesting.
did we
any
spend a lot of
funds.
money out of this fund to help pay for the expansion? I mean, the relocation and expansion?
We did.
So is this one where it's almost a mission accomplished? One that when you redo the fees, unless you visualize a even bigger, better library down the road, you could possibly.
I would certainly push for that. There may be others in the community, although it's pulling teeth. Every year we ask them, hey, do you need to buy more books or more? Because this can be used for additional books or volumes or whatever, media type thing that they're loaning. And they just never come back with anything like, yes, we want to do this thing. So this is certainly one I would consider might be a way where we could reduce this and
Mhm.
increase that transportation one.
Yeah, got it. Okay. All right. Any questions on that? And I think we already talked about aerial fire truck
Yep.
Yes,
fees. And is that it?
that's it. The only other fund, which we did not bring to you today, is the CFD, the Community Facilities District Fund. That hasn't been completely finalized. So we hope to bring that to you at a later meeting.
Okay. Speaking of that, a few years ago, we created a separate CFD for the Walmart property. And as Rochelle and I were talking this week about somebody complaining about having to pay into the regular CFD prior to occupancy, I guess based on permits being pulled, I'm assuming that Walmart has not had to pay any fees. And is that because they haven't pulled any permits, which of course they're not going to do, but, and how is that affected by any subsequent development that goes on the property, that might be different than what Walmart would have done, but is still in the boundaries of that CFD?
So I have to go back and look at Walmart, but the Walmart CFD was a different CFD than police and fire services. The one that they adopted was for maintenance of the public improvements that they were going to put in. So I imagine that still stands and it kind of has a separate thing. Walmart was a very negotiated thing. So I don't know if any housing in the Walmart development has to pay into the CFD or not. I'd have to go back through all of the approvals and figure it out.
Gotcha. Although they might still have, do public improvements on the roads, but improvements that are different than those originally envisioned
Correct.
under Walmart. So they might still be subject to a CFD, but would have to be recalculated and
Yeah.
rejigger.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, Cindy, is there anything else we need to know? And refresh our memory again about what's the topic next week? Is it capital improvements or what is it next week?
Yes, we are working to get those done. So we hope to have those to you next week.
Okay. Mark, do you have any questions?
No, not at this point. This is it'll be a learning curve, but I'll get there.
Yeah, it's an animal unto itself, that's for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
So it's not exactly easy reading,
Yeah.
especially for the uninitiated.
If I have a bout of insomnia, I'll be sure to open this up.
That's it.
Yes, there you go.
You should see the hundreds of spreadsheets behind everything too.
I'm sure.
You guys have a huge spreadsheet that ties into each other?
Oh,
Right.
yes.
And so they had this
Oh,
gigantic Excel thing that had, and things tied in,
Circular manner and, hey, you allocate
back and
something.
forth, and
Yeah.
one mistake could screw up the whole thing.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
No, I do a lot of formulas in Excel, and you get that one circular reference, and it's like, oh my God, where is it? And you can't
That's
find
it.
it. Yeah.
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 Well, these are purposefully circular, but it's like, I don't know, 60 spreadsheets tied together with circular references between building maintenance allocating to technology and technology allocating to building maintenance and
Oh,
all
yeah.
of them allocating to everything else. And it was just like,
Yeah. I assume we have like a cost allocation plan or something to meet OMB purposes.
We did. It's really old.
Yeah, because those things can get complicated.
I think it's pre-me.
Oh, wow. Okay. All right, you guys, I think we, Amanda, I'm assuming we did not pick up any other members of the public who might want to comment. So we will, I think, can safely adjourn the meeting. And thank you all.
Thank you all.
All right.
See you next
you.
week on Tuesday for some of us, and then next Thursday.
Okay.
All right. We'll see you.
Take care.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye, Amanda.